Well, the next lady happens to be one of my best friends for decades. And when I met Sandy Nickerson, I think he'd just gotten out of the Marine Corps. And she and her partner at the time were thinking about opening a business because they're from California and we have earthquakes all the time. So they picked the name Survival Systems with the idea that they were going to do emergency kits. And one day Sandy picks up the phone and it's someone that wanted them to do a search, an executive search, because her partner had previously been in that business. So Sandy grabbed the ball and ran with it, and the rest is history. But what I would love to share with you is she now has one of the largest staffing agencies, probably the largest staffing agency in the power supply company, tremendously successful, and she has not changed one bit since the day I met her. She's still marvelous, humble, and filled with great advice. And one of the things I wanted to share that she shared with me, I already had sold a successful ad agency and everything when I met her, and she was not quite as mature as I was. She still isn't. There was a little bit of an experience, their age gap, but she was such a mentor to me. And one of the things she told me is she said, Viki, if you put in 150%, you will never regret anything that looks like a failure or something that doesn't succeed or a stopgap, because you know you would have put everything into it. And I've lived that ever since she told me that all those decades ago, and it was the best advice I ever got. It wasn't the only advice I ever got from her, but it was the best. So Sandy, come on up.
That was the solicited advice. I probably gave you a lot of unsolicited advice. Welcome to my life. I carry it all here. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I had birthday cake in boot camp, and with 50 other women, and they sang happy birthday to me. I never did go to my high school graduation because I graduated early and decided that I had to get out of my house because my mom made minimum wage and she couldn't afford to take care of me and my sister who were left at home. There were 9 of us kids, and my mom and dad had gotten divorced when I was around 16, and they had gotten divorced, and that just put a big ripple in our life, if you can imagine this, okay? And my mom was broke. She couldn't get credit at the time. My father had held all the credit. And these things made huge impressions on me. And it made me decide that in life I needed to be very independent. And someone asked earlier, what do you strive to be? I strive to be more trusting, the truth is. But that's my thing. We all have different things. I strive to be more trusting, but I'm extremely independent. And so what that means is that from an early age, I really didn't look for anybody to give me something or make things happen for myself. I believed in hard work, and I credit that to my mom. My mom was the hardest worker. If you can imagine 9 children, in order to feed us, she'd have to garden 1/3 of an acre. She went out after my brothers left for school, and she finished milking the cow so that, because if you realize anything about cows, that if you don't milk them thoroughly, they dry up. And so for 9 kids, she did that, and I watched her sweat and tears. And the thing I took away with my father is my father he learned constantly, and he taught himself to speak Spanish. He taught himself to make keys. He taught himself to do all these things. And so, I have virtually no formal education after high school. And yet I learn from everything I do, and I think I learned that from my dad. And that has helped me. And a lot of people have asked me during my life, like, what makes me so driven? By the time I was 29 years old, I had bought a $700,000 house and owned a business. And so I was well on my way to success. And I'd had my first child at 25 and 27 and 28, my last child. So, I felt I was doing it all. And I had a nanny, thank goodness. I hired a nanny who actually, believe it or not, she still works for me and she takes care of my ex-husband at the moment. So she still works for me. So I have to tell you that when you're friends of mine, you are friends for life. You cannot get away from me. But I want to share some of the things that motivated me through life, because I think that that's important, because if you know what motivates you, then you can go on and live a very passionate life, I believe. I was in third grade, and a thing happened when I was in third grade that will mold me for the rest of my life. And it was Christmas time, and my cousins who lived across the street, they got motorcycles for Christmas from my uncle. The same uncle didn't come even to our house to say hello. There were 9 of us kids at home, and I thought, gee, what is wrong with us? Why would he do something for someone, and why did they get that? And I remember I really contemplated that for a long time, and finally I realized, this is part of, like, you're gonna have to do it for yourself. You're gonna have to do it for yourself, Sandy, if you want something. But I realized at that moment we were so poor that he couldn't provide for 9 of us, and therefore he provided nothing for any of us. And I don't blame him to this day, but he gave me something that he probably never even realizes. That dissatisfaction about being poor has driven me my entire life. And it made me so driven that when I was in the Marine Corps, I was competing against 36 other men, and we were in electronics school, and I wanted to come out first in my class, but I wasn't. But I kept persisting, and I kept at it, and I kept to my books, and bit by bit, I climbed up the ladder. I became the 6th in the class. I became the 4th in the class. And I went into the finals, number 4. Do you know those 3 other guys choked during the test in the finals? And I came out number 1 in the class. And I'm telling you, most of my wins in life are because everybody else quits or chokes. It's not a lot of other stuff. I just stay in the game. Persistence counts. Because of that, I was meritoriously promoted. I was a corporal, which is an E4, in 16 months from being in the Marine Corps. Most people hit that in 4 years, but I did it in 16 months. So they gave me a raise, and so at that time I was making $7,000 whopping dollars a year. 7,000, that just was amazing in the Marine Corps. But it did allow me to buy my own car, and someone told me about the world of recruiting, and so I was actually going to go to college and ran out of money and decided I'm going to take a flyer at recruiting. Does anybody know what recruiting is? So executive recruiting is really kind of a fun thing. You work with clients, big clients, and they hire me. They pay me $30 or $40 or $50,000 a year, or per placement. They paid me to find them a design engineer, or an engineering manager, or a director of engineering, and so they come and they tell us what kind of talent they're looking for. And so then I have to go out and call 200 people in the power electronics industry and find the best match. And so you get a lot of rejection, but the other thing you get is you get this wonderful bird's eye view of people, and people who are really smart, and people who are out to do wonderful things. When I first started in power electronics 35 years ago, the power efficiencies, this probably doesn't mean anything to you, but it's cool, okay? The power efficiencies at the time they had linear power supplies. And linear power supplies, when they would take 100 volts into a power supply and convert it to DC current, because that's how they need it, you change it from AC to DC current, they would lose 40% of the power in that exchange. That's amazing. That's a tremendous amount of loss. You have your laptop on your legs and you feel heat, that's not good. That's power loss. You feel the lamp, a light that puts heat out, that's power loss. That's lost power. Well, today, because of switching power supplies and because of semiconductors, the world is really changing a lot. We have 99% efficiencies in some cases. That's good. That's why LED lighting is so important in this everywhere. Because again, if you put your hand against that, there's no heat, there's no loss. So my thing in being in analog and power electronics is that I feel I'm helping build a smarter, better world by placing people. And it's a slow process. I mean, I'm placing one person at a time, but I know that that person will go out and make a difference in life. And I just think that's how it's done. Someone said you write a book one page at a time. I think that's true. You live your life one day at a time. You make a small difference every day. So the other thing that I want to share with you is dissatisfactions that I had as a kid. The other dissatisfactions, because they drive you, I got my first bicycle when I was probably 14 years old. And all the other kids had other sources of money, I suppose. And when my father and mom got divorced, I never got that bicycle back. Again, reconfirming in my mind that I have to be dependent on myself. So eventually, life goes on. I was married. I had 3 kids. I became very, very successful. And then I tried to keep thinking about what are all the things that make me tick. And I realized and these are hardcore things to face in yourself. So, and I tell you, you need to embrace your own self because no one is like you. I was not my mother's favorite child. That turned out to be a gift. I was not my father's favorite child. It's interesting. When you're between, what do you have to do? You have to fight for it. You have to compete for it. You have to compete for attention. You have to, everything is really, you have to do something that makes you stand out. What that did is it sent me into absolutely being a ferocious learner and doing well in school. These are just interesting things. Another thing that changed my life, I've been very successful and doing many different things, and I get breast cancer. And not too long ago, 2.5 years ago. I'm all clear, clean today, but it really comes from having successful habits, getting to the doctor, having found it early, and getting in and having surgery and making things happen for myself, standing on my own. It was at that time that I actually left my husband during that time. Hard things to do. But let me tell you where some of my dreams have come from, because that's, along with dissatisfaction, which becomes your motivation in life, it really feeds you if you can just lock into it. The other thing that feeds you in life is to have dreams. And from a kid, I had all these great dreams. By the way, I do want to say that I make my bed. Someone said making your bed is important. And I don't know if anybody watched me, but I take copious notes. I write notes about everything, so I don't know if that has anything. So, some of my dreams. The thing that I think makes me a winner is the fact that I'm not afraid to dream. I used to dream that I was a superhero. And I don't know, I used to love like Adamant, and that I would come to the rescue, that there would be some accident, and I would jump out of my car, and I would be there for them. Well, what's funny is because I am a superhero. I'm a superhero because when General Electric needs a power engineer in order to develop a new device that will save us smart power and better, greater efficiencies, who do they come to? I'm the superhero. One of my dreams when I was a child is to live into a super cool house. So when I was like 16 or 17 years old, I could drive, and I would take my mom's car, a Pinto, and I would stock out the best neighborhoods in Northern California. Northern California for me was Stockton. Stockton, if anybody's driven through there, maybe not the best, right? But I would stock out, I went and found the best houses within Stockton. And I turned around and I sat there one day. I found the house that I absolutely wanted to live in. Didn't have to be there, but this was the concept. What I was doing is building a vision. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I sat out there and looked at that house and just thought about, wow, what would I have to do in order to own that house? I mean, the guy came home in his fancy car, and he was able to lift up the garage door without even touching it. And I thought, wow, I just want to do that. And so I backtracked and I figured, how much money does that man and woman have to make in order to live in that house? Oh, and here I am, a kid, doing this. I have no tutoring going on from outside source, which would have been a big help. Mentoring would have been wonderful. But I figured I needed to make $250,000 a year. I don't know how I derived that number, but that's where I ended up with. So that was one of my dreams. I now make about $10,000 a day, just so you know. It is a lot. I wanted to be important. I wanted to be important because, do you remember Captain Kangaroo? Well, he wasn't so important to me. Do you remember Mr. Green Jeans? Okay, what did Mr. Green Jeans have? Come on, he had that big roll of keys that everybody needed him for. I have books of keys from the properties that I own today. Everything that it's like it rolls forward. I have keys today, so it satisfied my need to feel important. It's funny, I know. I wanted to be an explorer. I make it sound like I didn't do anything at all as a kid except dream, but I'm telling you, this is the only way I could survive my life. I wanted to be an explorer. Well, the cool thing is when becoming an explorer, when I got married, I inherited a big boat, a 51-foot sailing boat. And that boat took me many, many places. In fact, sailing is how I met Viki. So it's just interesting how in life, some of these base things can get you going. What I have figured out, and I have probably trained probably 160 people in the last 4 years to be recruiters. And so I'm working with people all the time, and I do believe in mentorship. But there are two things you have to do in order to be successful. One of them is you have to be able to ask for help. We all have one thing or another. We can either give help freely, and we're bad at asking for help. That's typical, okay? Or the reverse. You need to be able to do both. If you're going to be successful, you need to ask for help, and you need to be willing to give help freely. So where's the give help in recruiting? In recruiting, in my life, it has a lot to do with your giving help. It's an impactful business. And so I feel like I lived that life all the time. Asking for help was hard for me, and it was hard for me to learn. And it was hard because my mom was so prideful, and she really never taught me how to do that. And so as an adult, I had to learn. I'm going to give you your wisdom here, because these things are important in life. And I learned this in business, and I learned this in my personal life. There's only two things that you really own in life. What are they? You own two things in life. Thought process, and your body, your authenticity. I believe you have your integrity and your knowledge. And only you can give those two things away. Choose knowledge. Don't ever give your integrity away. I'll give you another one that keeps you in the learning mode, because you need to be a student in life to keep moving and also to just be an interesting person. Argue your point. I taught my kids this probably too well. Argue your point like you are right. Listen like you're wrong. Think about it. Very, 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 very powerful. Everyone says work smart, not hard. I've failed at that every time I've tried to do it. You have to do both. You have to work smart. You have to work hard. I've never, ever, ever lived a balanced life. When you have money, you don't have time. When you have time, you don't have money. When it doesn't work for me, a balanced life. You have to, it's like I'm playing a lot this year. I still work. My son is running our business, but I worked very, very hard during the beginning years. I mean, I took 3 days off after having a child. That was enough. It was back to work. In fact, my second son, I closed the deal in the hospital bed. What can I say? He's a good closer this day. Learn to use that out of balance to propel you forward, to be passionate, to keep you creative, to force you to learn new things. Watch a 1-year-old try to learn to walk. They're never in balance, and yet they move forward. So things that you can do so that you can love what you do. I love recruiting. I love the business that I'm in and got lucky enough to do it at age 23. But find something to be obsessed about. I'm obsessed about sailing. I'm obsessed about Keith Urban songs. I have a blog, a food blog, because I became a chef, awesomebites.com. Listen to music that makes you feel good. It makes you more fun. If you're not listening to music that makes you want to dance, you're listening to the wrong stuff. Find something you love. There is a great game out there called 2048 as an app, and it's a fun game, and it'll be addicting for you. I love singing to my grandkids. I love creativity in terms of art, metal art. I welded my oldest son, when he turned 18, he bought a muffler, and I welded that on the bottom, on his car. He'll never forget that. And last but not least, the things that I've been doing in life. I took my kids to the World Series game recently. I did Italy with 5 kids, with 5 girlfriends, which turned out to be the best thing I've ever best vacation ever. I went to the America's Cup race with my oldest son. I purchased the cord blood for my grandchildren when they're born. I purchased the cord blood so that if they ever have leukemia, I lost a nephew to leukemia, and had we had that, it would have saved his life. It's expensive, but some things are worth doing. It's an insurance you hope you never ever have to use. I've remodeled a home instead of going to psychological counseling. I've been to Keith Urban's concerts. I've been to Chris Stapleton's concert. I have 3 children of my own, but I also have 2 stepchildren, and altogether I have 9 grandchildren and 2 on the way. And so life is good. Enjoy. Thank you.
I don't know how many years ago it was when we brought out this book. I think it might have been 5 years ago or so. But it was kind of like the cancer book. It was near and dear to my heart. It's called Wounded, Survive, Thrive. And it was stories from 101 women about what the trouble and trials that they went through, and how that converted to real success for them. And it's just a wonderful book, and Sandy contributed to that book. So it's out of print now, and we have very few copies left, so someone in this audience is going to get one from Sandy.